Hi there. This January 30th, 2021 has been a happy week for me. Now you might ask, why is that? Why is it happy? I don't know, but it has been. I'm very glad that whatever my strategies are, because I know sometimes this is not easy to do, because our brains sometimes just go off in their own direction. But my brain has helped me. I'm starting to see the positive in this. I'm starting to see ways out. And also, I've learned about myself, and I've learned better how to deal with all this. And I'm delighted. So one of my first steps, first things that I do, is I pay attention to what I'm listening to and how it affects me. So there's a lot of programs I watch, but I don't watch anything where it's like, oh, what is America coming to? And we're on a downward path, and this is terrible what they're doing, and whatever. I don't do that. I don't do that. What I do is listen to people who make me think, where there's action oriented, and I don't do it all the time. I most definitely don't do it at night, because I find that it works its way into my dreams. My brain keeps processing it, and I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it. And I try not to do it first thing in the morning, because I need to focus on more positive things. So usually it's kind of the afternoon that works. So that's helped me a lot. And I think that is imperative for all of us, to find what keeps us going, what keeps us hopeful, and what keeps us action-oriented, to where we take the right actions. Now, they're not going to be the same for all of us. Some of us are not so politically inclined, but we have to live according to our values. This is the long game, and we have to treat it as a long game. And then we also have to focus on, a lot of this is thoughts in our head. Look at your daily life. What has changed? What is different? There's not something out there that's gonna save you or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of things, if you listen to the news, whether you're on the left or the right, that can get you upset and worried. But that's been true long before this fraudulent election happened. So you have to disassociate yourself from it and look around you and decide what makes sense. That's my advice. I hate to get into what I call housekeeping, because I know when I'm listening to a video, I don't like it when they talk about housekeeping stuff at the beginning. But in case you don't listen to this whole video, I want you to know this is my last weekly video. I will still, so this is weekly episode number 60. I'll still have episode number 61, number 62. But given that things are starting to open up, and also I just had a birthday, you don't need to tell me happy birthday. I got plenty of those yesterday. I've been thinking a lot about where I want to go from here, and devoting every Saturday to this video, meaning I really couldn't take trips during the weekend or couldn't go out to dinner on Saturday night. There were just various things going on that were not possible, and I chose to do that. So at first I thought I'll just do it once a month, but then I got lovely responses from you all about how much you enjoyed the videos, and that does mean a lot to me. And then in one of my birthday greetings yesterday from my sister Denise, she said, oh, I love watching you every week. And I just thought, that is just so cool. And I realized, no, I basically want to do it pretty much once a week. So I'm thinking every other week, maybe 3 out of 4 weeks. I want to play it by ear. And when I do it, it will be on Saturday evening. So I encourage you, if you're subscribed to my channel, to hit the notification bell, hit it, click on it, and so that you get notified when I put up another video. Because like next Saturday, I'm not going to do a video. That's what got me thinking about it. I want to do something else next Saturday. And this frees me up because I worried, like, oh wow, what if I need to do this and I need to do that? But I had chosen this past year, and it was kind of easy with the shutdown, frankly. I had chosen not to do anything else. Saturdays were sacrosanct for this. So that was important to me. And so I won't do it next week, but I'll do it the next week. And if any of you are curious, like when are you going to do the next one, just write a comment on my latest video and ask me, as the week progresses, are you planning on doing one this Saturday? And I will probably know, and I'll say, yes, I plan on doing one. So I'd like to keep this up. I'm honored to have you as my audience. And that took a while to build up. Why would I want to let that go when this is really something quite fulfilling for me? I just need some Saturdays off. And also, if I feel like I don't have anything much to say, actually, that is never true for me. I always have a lot to say. But if I don't have anything I think that would be helpful, I don't know. I'll just play it by ear, okay? So, having said that, thank you for those that listen and for many of you who comment. I do appreciate it. So, that's where I am there. Now, let me tell you some of the programs that I really like, which make me feel good. Like there's Debbie, I'm going to pronounce her name right, Georgatos, but it's spelled like George, Georgatos, pronounced Debbie Georgatos. And it's America Can We Talk? And she's a woman, I guess about my age, and her stuff is informative, interesting, and pretty much daily. So I like listening to her. As many of you know, I like listening to Dinesh D'Souza because he has a great intellectual history. I like to think about things. And I do like listening to Steve Bannon's War Room, which you get from an app. And it's complicated, but I finally learned how to manage that app, to be able to, because he puts stuff out every day and he interviews people. Like the latest one, he talked to Scott Pressler. Remember, that was the young man that was getting people up. Now, he is someone who has very concrete examples of what we can do at the local level and the state level for the upcoming elections. He's very practical, and he's done a lot of the work for people. It's wonderful. So if you're action-oriented, find out about Scott Pressler. I mean, he gave all the information on the War Room app, and if some of you need that, I'll find out how you can. I mean, he says who you call, what you sign up for, what you do, but he's also very practical and very smart. So there's a lot we can do, and there's some of us who are really good at political action. I mentioned Tony Masherin, who listens to this, what do you call it, broadcast vlog. And I want to correct something I said. Now, I have mental glitches, and many of you probably notice, but I've always had these mental glitches. So it's not about my age. But every once in a while, I will just say the wrong word, or I'll flip it. And I've always had this. And it used to make me afraid to do something like this, because I do also have a perfectionist tendency. But when I was talking about Tony and what she had written in one of her comments, I said, she, instead of, she's decided now to devote herself to her career or company. And I meant to say to her country. I mean, it changed the meaning completely. So I apologized to her and she accepted my apology. And then last week I said John Peterson when I meant to say Jordan Peterson. It's like, oh, of course I know Jordan Peterson. I know his name. Why I said John Peterson, I don't know. So that happens, and when you hear it, just go there, another little mental glitch. Part of my inner growth has been to just accept that I do this and not feel like, oh my God, I'm not perfect, and so I can't do this. You know, I can't bear it. That used to be the case. It really bothered me in the past. Now I just say, well, that's the way it is. I make mistakes. Okay, so I think those are, Joshua Phillips, Crossroads. I like listening to him. And I do listen to NTD, that's capital NTD News. It doesn't rile me up, but it tells me things that are going on. Last night I listened to Greg Kelly. Even Greg Kelly I hadn't listened to all week because, quite frankly, any of those programs that talk about what the Biden administration is doing, I kind of just want to know, but I don't want to know the details. I don't want to get riled up. I accept that we've got this. But I'm actually looking at this positive. This stuff has been going on a long time. And now people are going to find out. People, you know, are going to get this, and I don't think they're going to like it. Certainly we've seen that with the energy issues, people losing jobs, with the cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline, and all of these things. You know, people are starting to like, what? You know, some of them didn't like Trump for whatever, you know, they didn't like his personality, but I think Trump is going to look better with time for a lot of these people. And I do want to, one of the things I've been doing is rereading I go through my journals, and it's very interesting to read what I wrote at different times. So clearly starting around 2014, well actually starting in 2010, but it took a long time. But as you know, the thing that made me a Democrat changed to being a Republican was the whole climate issue. As I started looking more and more into the science, I saw how bad it was. Now, how did that happen? Well, one of the things that happened, aside from me just learning more about it, because I was always interested in the history of the Earth and temperature, you know, I saw that we had very high CO2 levels in the past when, for example, coral reefs developed. Well, now acidification of the oceans, which is BS, okay? You're gonna not have coral reefs. Well, if coral reefs evolved when CO2 levels were much higher, it doesn't make any sense. So there was just, and I used to read, I used to get Science magazine, Nature magazine, and I would read these articles, and I could see that the arguments that were being made were bogus. And then they'd have these editorials about how climate change is real, global warming is real, we gotta do something about it. Editorials in these science magazines, well, what does that tell you? Right off the bat, they're not gonna publish anything that disputes the narrative. So, and then also, I was discussing this with people at Caltech and scientists, and one of the things I noticed is that the people who were in the geology and planetary sciences, which is where the environmental people are, it was easier to talk with them than it was in the physics, mathematics, and astronomy group, which didn't deal with climate change. They just accepted it. Also, I was in biology and biological engineering at that chair's council, and those scientists were working on biology. They just accepted global warming. So if I brought up views counter to that, they were like taken aback. But I didn't have trouble talking with the people who were knowledgeable on the issue. They just thought, well, yeah, okay, the models are bad, yeah. And they took my views to be that, hey, if it gets a little bit warmer, then let's work on mitigation efforts. Let's make sure that we can cope, which is a much, much cheaper way to do it. I mean, to try to, I don't need to go into it now, but what I found overall was the most avid proponents of global warming, climate change, we need renewable energy, were the people who knew the least about it. I remember this very nice man that I was talking to at the gym, and I wrote about it in my journal, because it's almost shocking. I was explaining to him, he says, oh no, we have to have renewable. We have to have solar panels. He was such a believer. And he was a voiceover actor. It's like, he never studied this. It was like a religion to him. He just believed it avidly, okay? So you couldn't talk to people like that. That was what was out there. Now, many of you are seeing the same thing with all the stuff about COVID, all the stuff about masks, all the stuff about what we should do. You know, it's like people are so certain you wear the mask, you don't get sick. Okay, whatever. If that's the belief that this is what the mainstream belief, that's what we're all going to believe. Well, we've certainly seen that. They're trying very hard to say, oh, you don't believe in election fraud. Like, are you crazy? So it was interesting to listen to Rand Paul talk to George Stephanopoulos. Not that I listen to ABC News, but America Can We Talk, Debbie Georgatos, her show had clips. I think Dinesh D'Souza had clips where Rand Paul spoke like, hey, George, you know, there's two sides to this discussion. How could we not discuss it? You're just stating as a fact that there was none, and like, why would I even question it? Now, I applaud Rand Paul for going on the other side and talking to somebody like that. And I realize he is a very good person because he sounded so reasonable. And I'm remembering when I first started considering voting Republican for the first time because of the whole climate change thing. This was a huge, huge change for me. Now, the reason I'm bringing up this past stuff is to talk about how do we approach other people. What is the most convincing to other people? Because I'm not saying we have to convince other people, but we can convince other people. And I think, by the way, as the Biden administration, as the Democrats in Congress flub up one thing after another, really show their colors as they are already in these first week or so, I think there's a lot of openings. There's going to be more and more people coming over to our side. So that's why I'm talking about how did I come over. Because often it's just one issue, one thing that they care about. And once you open that door to not accepting the leftist narrative, the mainstream narrative, once you open that door, then the door opens for other things. At least it did for me. That's all I can speak about is my own experience. So that's all you have to do. Now, one of the things that influenced me, as I've mentioned before, is that the scientists that questioned global warming were just much more impressive than the scientists who spoke the other way. They were just, as human beings, they were more ethical, they were kinder, they spoke in a low-key, very careful, scientific way, the way I believe science should be. They weren't So for example, John Christie at the University of Alabama, he influenced me a lot. I was very impressed. And he was attacked. I was very impressed by how he put out his views. And, you know, I think it was hard on him. He sort of faded from sight. I don't see him out in the public sphere because that wears on people. That's tough. And then a lot of these older, really good scientists that really understood atmospheric physics, true climate scientists, not the ones now who just play with models. I mean, they really understood all the factors. And, you know, William Happer, for example, that advised Clinton in the beginning, he was one of those. He understood atmospheric physics. But all of these people, they just made much more sense to me. So once I was fully on board, let me read you something. I used to like to watch Bill Maher. I don't watch him anymore, even though sometimes he's interesting, but I still don't want to watch him. And it was mainly because of the whole climate change thing. He was totally on board. But this is January 23rd, 2016. Okay. So I'm reading from my journal. Thinking now about Bill Maher's snarky question to a youngish conservative woman on his show last night. The dislike I felt for him was intense at that moment, as he said with a sneer, "Oh, don't tell me you don't think global warming is real." Now let me just say something. That's the same thing that people like Chuck Todd, George Stephanopoulos, oh, don't tell me you think that the election was fraudulent. Oh, don't tell me you think this. So I've been through this before. But here's the thing. People that go on show, they feel like they have to defend themselves, okay? I mean, I wouldn't do that. I'd say, yeah, I don't really think it's a problem. What of it? I mean, I would just go right back. But here's how she did it, so she could, whoever this woman was, she immediately assured him that she of course believed it. Oh, no, I believe it, of course. I'm not one of those. But went on to say that she advocated for a solution based on adaptation rather than upending our energy economy. Well, not a bad answer, but I mean, I would say, well, there's a lot of conflicting data on that point. There is some warming, I don't know what's causing it, but there's also some cooling. We go through cycles, but whatever. I would have solutions based on adaptation rather than trying to upend our energy economy. So I wrote, I felt anger. I wanted to write to him and tell him off, never watch his show again, etc., etc. But now I have a better strategy. This is what I was writing 5 years ago. Look him and people like him straight in the eye and say, no, I don't believe in it the way you do. Say it with confidence and social fearlessness. But the point here is to not let the group leader dominate or bully me. If nothing else, my calm demeanor and slight smile will throw him off somewhat. So I was struggling with this stuff a long time ago. And the problem was, it was even people on the right, even conservatives. I mean, pretty much everybody had bought into this. At least with the election fraud issue, we have about half the country on our side, which makes it easier. But I'm just saying, I've been there before. And I spoke out a lot. I am constitutionally unable not to speak out. But it was hard for me. We're all different. I was thinking about Karlin Voronchenko. I just saw a headline where she said, you know, if you you close your Twitter account, because of censorship, you're letting Twitter win. And I thought, well, that may be your view, but it's not mine. First of all, I wasn't enjoying Twitter. And I didn't enjoy that people that I liked were getting censored. But she has a kind of a fearlessness to her. She doesn't mind arguing with the left. I do. I don't like it. It's not for me. So why would I want to be on Twitter? I didn't like seeing the ugly comments. I found it, if I couldn't read the people I liked, I don't want to be there. And also, I didn't want to support it in any way, shape, or form. But that's me. We all have our ways of dealing with this. And only you, like you might not be a person that wants to argue with people. That might be too hard for you. I actually don't think arguing works. I think what works, if it's going to work at all, is just to quietly state what you feel or what you're doing. So for example, I sometimes kind of bring up religious beliefs or what I think, and some of you write back. Maybe you have a different kind of religious belief. But if you're just telling me what you believe, I respect that. I respect that a lot. But if there's a tone of like, you're wrong and this is what you should believe, I recoil. Now I say but I think everybody's like that. If I'm telling you, you need to do this, or this is what you should believe, I think it's a mistake. I think it turns people off. But if you quietly and fearlessly just say, no, it was like talking to Lindsay when she said she was at the group and she said, oh, I'm voting for Trump. Oh, really? And some of her other friends said, yeah, I'm voting for it too. She didn't make a big deal out of it. She just told them. But it's very effective because everybody loves Lindsay, my niece. She has lots of friends. First you have to establish some sort of connection. And then just say, but also, I think it's a mistake. When I'm telling you this, I'm actually telling myself this too. To think that you need to change someone's mind. To think that that's your role. I don't think that's my role anymore. I'm just going to state what I think. I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to do what I can do. Like one of the things I've done is, since I do have some money, and a lot more money now that I'm not giving money to Caltech, oh my gosh, that's saving me a lot of money. I'm sending money, even smaller amounts, to any good Republican who is speaking out. So I accidentally, because I only meant to spend it, this is a lie, I only meant to send 1,000, but I thought it didn't go through. So I ended up sending $2,000 to Josh Hawley. Now, he was hugely attacked by the mainstream media. This is Senator Josh Hawley in Missouri. But he's still out there speaking out. Now, there's a part of me that says, he knows there's someone in California, and maybe other places, who likes what he's doing, who supports what he's doing. So I'm glad I made that mistake and sent him $2,000. Because I think I'm helping. These others who have spoken out, I think I'm helping. I'm saying, yes, you are speaking for me. So that's one of the things I do. So I want to support those people. And I'm not saying a lot of you are not in a financial situation to do it. But if you can, even $10, even anything, because it says, I'm at this other place in the country, and I like what you're doing. You're sticking your neck out, and you have got support around the country. That's big. That's big. In the same way it's big that the Republican National Committee and other groups like that by us not giving money to them, and I'll say why, until I know that you're fixing election fraud issues, that you're not supporting any rhinos or anybody who supported impeachment against our president, Trump. I'm not giving to you. I am not giving to you. But now, when President Trump, who's going to be getting more, when he has primary challengers that he's pointing out in 2022, which is apparently what he's going to do, I'm sending money to whoever he points out. Can you imagine how much power he'll have when he can mobilize that many people? They're going to listen to President Trump. They're going to know you do not diss him because we have his back. We are grateful for what he's done to this country. You know, as you know, and I've said this many times, I do believe he's one of the greatest presidents that we've had, at least since Abraham Lincoln. Now the reason I want to say that is imagine my shock, because I had forgotten what I wrote about President Trump in March 30th, 2016. I mean, I'm retroactively horrified, but there's a point for me reading this to you. Because think of all the people with Trump derangement syndrome, okay, and he's out of office. So it starts to fade. They figure out other things to put their weird emotional problems on. Some of them are going to miss him. Some of them who didn't care for him are going to realize how good his policies were, because they were good policies, very good policies. And I think they're going to come around, because you're going to see, I came around. This is amazing to me. I remember, this was, okay. I watched the Republican town hall in Wisconsin, moderated by CNN's Anderson Cooper. This is March 30th, 2016. Okay, this is hard for me to read this. My overwhelming, horrific feeling is Donald Trump is an ignorant, narcissistic wrecking ball. I was horrified as I listened to him. Now, since he finally has some advisors, he's talking about foreign policy. It's an incoherent, stream of consciousness plan that would create enemies everywhere. Has he never heard of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty? South Korea and Japan should have nuclear weapons, quote unquote. I guess he said that. Someone from the audience asked him what he thought the three most important roles of the national government. Security, 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 and healthcare, education, stuff like that. He bragged that it was he who got Scott Walker, Jeb Bush, etc. out of the race. Given my absolute horror in listening to this man, I have to hope that others will have a similar reaction. And then I wrote, Ted Cruz was superb. Anyway. Oh my God. Now, it's changed for me, as I've mentioned to you, some of you before, was once he got the nomination, and I listened to his first press conference fully. This is before I really understood that Trump spoke out loud his thoughts. So he was musing about things. I see that now. And I was like, whoa, I like how he's handling this press conference. Kind of reminded me of John Kennedy's press conferences, where he was very good with the press, banding back and forth. And that was the press conference where they kept asking about Russia. And I was starting to get annoyed how they just kept on Russia. What about Russia? And finally he said, completely joking, okay, what, you think I'm friends with Putin? Putin, if you're listening, and you have Hillary Clinton's emails, we'd all love for you to give them to us, because we can't find them, or whatever. And it was a joke. And I was still getting the LA Times, I was still getting, and I had the Google News page. And what I saw, Trump asked Russians to spy on Hillary Clinton or something. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what he said. And that's when I started seeing it. I thought, oh my God, they're doing the same thing to Trump that they did about the global warming. They're not reporting the news accurately. This is when I'm starting to understand what the mainstream media was doing. So how did I change? What happened? It was the global warming, but then it was the effectiveness of Trump, and it was seeing how they lied about him, okay? And then later, in watching him, yes, I saw he was like not my type in terms of his sort of bombastic style. I mean, I couldn't see me like hanging out with him or whatever. But I saw how he interacted with people, how he held meetings, how he got input from people, and that he was questioning various assumptions. He wasn't just accepting what all the advisors told him, he was thinking it through. And I remember my own experience at the Pentagon, when I went to the Pentagon, because a lot of times, reminding me when Joe Biden would have his, executive orders and he's signing them, just stacks. Well, one of the things I did every evening, it was the last thing before I left the office, at my office at the Pentagon, is I had to sign stuff that would work its way up through the system. So, one time, I would read it, and most of the stuff was, yeah, I'll sign it, whatever. But one of them was a thing to allow for listening in on Pentagon phone calls to see if any secret information was being talked about on Pentagon office phones. Now, keep in mind, this is well before the time of cell phones, because I was there from 93 to late 1995. And I thought, whoa, I'm not signing this. That means if I call my husband Harold and say, honey, I'm going to be late, and we talk about our dinner plans or something, I'll call anybody on because that was my only phone during the day. If I call anybody, then you mean some little airman somewhere is going to be listening to everything I say to see if I say any secret information? And so I set it aside and said, I'm not signing this. So the next day and day after, I had all these people come in to tell me why I needed to sign this. And the more they talked, the more ridiculous it was. Because it turns out, even if they hear someone say, this is secret, or whatever, they weren't going to do anything about it. What prompted the whole thing was some general in charge of Pentagon security or whatever said, we're going to do a security review. So he could look good. We're doing a security review. And I said, but what's the point of this? This is just, people have an expectation of privacy when they talk on the phone. What is the point of doing this? And you're not even trying to actually catch people. But see, if they do that, they put these little airmen listening on the phone to conversations, then this general could sign off that he did a security review. And I said, I'm not signing this. And that just created a little uproar. I said, I'm not signing it, okay? So this was the kind of thing I was fighting at the Pentagon. And so this is another reason why I so admired President Trump. And Rick Grinnell, he talked about stuff like this. There's so much idiocy that to try to fight it all is exhausting. It was exhausting for me. But I'm not. I said, I figured somehow they'll find a way to bypass me and go to the assistant secretary. But so many people spent time. I must have had 3 different groups come in, try to convince me to sign this. And they never convinced me. And I just like, oh my. I said, I'm not signing this. This is idiotic. This is not right. So anyway, this is what President Trump did over and over and over again. You see, one of the benefits of me coming in as a political appointee into a position actually that had been held by career civil servants who had moved up the ranks, who'd been there forever, I saw the value in bringing in someone from the outside. Because you need fresh eyes to say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? I mean, you could take this to COVID measures. When you think about some of the ridiculous things they're doing in schools, you know, ridiculous. I mean, it's like you can sit around and think, oh, 1 mask, well, maybe 2 masks are better, maybe 3 masks are better, or we need to put barriers around the kids, we need to do this, Why do they do that? Who wants to be the one that says, we're not doing this, we're opening up? That's very hard to do. That's even true for countries. Even though all the logic says, open up, don't do this. It's time to open up. It's like once the ball gets rolling in a particular direction, it's very hard to change. It's very hard. People used to say at the Pentagon, you can't think of making big changes. It's like a big ship. You might just turn it a little bit. But you know, there was a point where it was just, I was so tired. I was so tired. And I was starting to get depressed. I thought, I'm done. So after 2.5 years, I left. I had sort of had it in my head that I would stay 3 years. Because you know, I had a commuter marriage, lived at the Watergate, beautiful office at the Pentagon. For those of you who don't know, I was a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Command, Control, and Communication. And I was on the E-ring. I mean, you could look at a picture of the Pentagon, I could say, those 3 windows are my office. I mean, I had a really good position. It was the protocol equivalent of a 3.5-star general. So I was interacting with generals, I was doing a lot, and you know, I was still my same personality, where I spoke up. And you'd have allies. I mean, I have tons of stories. Maybe someday I'll weave more stories in. But it's tough. It's tough. So, hence a lot of my admiration for President Donald Trump. I mean, he didn't want to waste time. He didn't want to do things that he thought was not good. It was what I did writ large. Writ large. Okay. So I admire those people that want to talk on the left, like especially someone like Rand Paul. I mean, it's interesting to me. You see, I may not agree with everything he says, but he spoke in such a way that I, as an earlier committed Democrat, thought, well, maybe I could vote for Rand Paul. You see, when someone speaks about, I mean, there's a role for people like him. Because he's not so far into our camp that they can write him off. I mean, I think he's excellent. I'm thinking about just sending some money to him to show my appreciation. Not a lot, but just, I love that he's going around and he's saying, yes, there were problems with this election. He's not backing down. So in terms of convincing other people, I think it's very important, no lecturing. I've learned that. It doesn't work. Just say what you believe. Just say, look, they've been, I mean, say on global warming, you don't want to get into all that scientific. Just say, we've been talking about that forever. What? Were we not supposed to have snow? That was like 20 years ago. We're not going to have snow. Well, we got snow. I don't think we should ruin our energy economy. And don't plants need more CO2? Hasn't the earth gotten greener? It has. You can safely say that. and just say, I think we're overly focused on that. And we think we can control the climate. No. And if anything, warmer climates are better than colder climates. I'm more worried about it getting colder later, because we are still in an ice age. We're in an interglacial. So technically speaking, we should be having, and the interglacials usually last about 10,000 years. And then you get these big ice sheets. That's why in the 70s they were very worried that, because we went through a cold spell. It's like 30 years, you go through these cycles. There's so many different cycles upon cycles. So, just say that, and just say, I'm not worried about it. And I certainly don't want my energy prices going up. I don't want to drive an electric car. Just say things like that. I want to make sure we have heat in the winter, air conditioning in the summer, and the lights don't go out. We don't have rolling blackouts. Look at what they're doing in California. That's, we need good, reliable energy. I don't want to, and another thing you could say is environmentally, I don't want all these solar farms. What if when the sun's not shining? And wind turbines. That's just crazy. They're environmentally yucky. And there's a lot of information about that. But you don't have to study it. You don't have to get into it. Just say, I'm not doing it. In the same way about COVID. Now, here's the interesting thing about COVID that I've been thinking about. This is totally anecdotal. But it seems to me that the people who are most worried about it, who mask up, who social distance, who stay indoors, whatever, seems like those are the people who are getting it. People in my life who aren't worried about it, and a lot of them are like my age, which is older, they're not getting it. So here's an interesting thing I just want to read to you. This is the Los Angeles magazine, which is it is a totally leftist magazine. It comes in the mail, free. But it said, invasion of the biohackers. LA's human longevity movement has become a billion-dollar industry. But does any of it actually work? Well, I'm interested in longevity stuff. So I thought, I'm going to read that. Now here's the interesting thing. So the author, college educated, he was weaving in all kinds of leftist narratives as he wrote this. And I was annoyed, of course, at that aspect. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. No, I'm sure he believes it. But he kind of has to do it in order to write for this magazine. Because if he went full bore with what they were saying, it wouldn't help with his editors. But what it did do was it allowed him to present the case. So let me just read you one thing that I had been thinking, and this is what those two doctors in Kern County, like Bakersfield, remember that video around April or something that went viral, and then YouTube took it down, when they were saying, you need to exercise your immune system. So almost a year now, people have not exercised their immune system. They've sterilized everything, they're not being close to people. So I think this is just, I'm guessing, that their immune systems aren't as good and they're more susceptible to illness. Because the people who've been ignoring that, like me, Robert, just people I know, they're not the ones getting sick. I'm not saying why can't they get sick? What happened to colds, flu, whatever? But let me just read, he did put down what one of these biohackers said. So let me read this. But this is also a logic that can provide cover for all sorts of bad advice. He's talking about one of these biohacker dudes. Like this. We should be out there exposing our immune systems to as many stressors as possible. Arian says about our time in lockdown. Instead, we're being told to go live in a bubble, which causes our immune system to basically take a nap. making us totally susceptible. Now, so he's quoting this guy, so you can read what this guy says, this health nut. So here's what this author said. For now, there is scant oversight of the biohacking industry from federal or state regulators. Like, he applauds that? Really? One of the nice things about the whole longevity market is, and Orrin Hatch was big on that when he was senator. So even though I wasn't a Republican, I did like what he was doing, which is don't get the government regulating nutritional supplements. Although some biohacks are backed up by varying levels of scientific evidence, many aren't. And the vast majority of the products pushed by hackers on their podcasts don't require FDA approval. Oh my God, really? The squishiness of the science, this is this leftist writer, okay, has made for some awkward alliances, attracting not only experimental free spirits, but also those living in an alternative universe. A recent article in the New Republic examined how various right-wing personalities like Ben Shapiro, Mike Cernovich, and Alex Jones have all taken to endorsing various brands of nootropics, which are intended to heighten focus and brain power and are accepted parts of a biohacker's routine. So anyway, and then he goes on and on. These health nuts, and ultra-conservative conspiracy theorists who believe Venezuela stole the 2020 election. So that's how they're talking about it. So anyway, I found that interesting on two counts. First of all, it was just funny reading this author. And first he made me mad, but then I thought, at least we're getting the information. At least the lefties are reading this information. Even though he's putting this whole spin, and you see you got to get FDA approval, because this is great to have FDA approval, but about exercising your immune system. Because it's been almost a year now where people have not exercised their immune system. So I've been thinking a lot about that. I think this whole idea of living in this sterile environment is not good for us. That's why it hasn't been, I don't get sick. I'm not doing anything in that regard. I also take important supplements. But anyway, it was fun reading that article. I'm not really into all this testing and all this, but I do believe in some of it. Like, I'm kind of interested in hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which is weird, because I've also read some scientific articles that point out that this helps in anti-aging. You go into this place where it's at high pressure oxygen, and a lot of people have gotten benefits from it. And there's some places in Santa Monica I go to. So I've been thinking about it, because I like what it said. Anyway, these are like hobbies for me. But it is important. It's important to take care of your health. And let me repeat, there's a lot of supplements that I take, but if you're not taking vitamin C, vitamin D3, I take 10,000 IU, international units. Not 1,000, not 2,000, 10,000 IU. I take zinc. I'm talking about things for your immune system. I also take quercetin. I talked about that. These are all things that are cheap, available, cheap. And I take quercetin because that and vitamin C seem to work a little bit like hydroxychloroquine. But I have been taking quercetin for years because that helps in autophagy, which is cleaning out your cells. Not autophagy. Senescent cells, clearing out senescent cells. So I've been taking that for a long time for anti-aging purposes. And it turns out it helps in that. So I think those are important. But I would say of all the things, vitamin D is the most important. You can only take one. But all of those are important. So, in closing, I'd like to say I did have a birthday yesterday. You don't need, like I said, don't tell me happy birthday. But it was a beautiful day for me. I actually got contacted by every single one of my siblings. We hadn't been sending birthday greetings every year, but I did, and my nieces and nephews. Really, it was really nice. And I hung out with Robert, and it was raining, so there was just a lot going on, and I felt really happy and peaceful. But one of the things, I did FaceTime with Lindsay and the 3 kids, Tyson, Kaylee, and Presley, and she did a really wonderful thing. She had them think about, what do they call me Aunt Deborah, even though I'm like great Aunt Deborah, because I'm great, whatever. She had them think about what was special about me to them. And it was a wonderful gift. It was a wonderful gift hearing these 3 precious, unique individuals. And Lindsay. Of course, Lindsay was more global because she doesn't need to tell me. I mean, we just already have so much. And I won't say what it was, but what Tyson, the 10-and-a-half-year-old boy, what he said to me, wow, really, really meant a lot. Something my friend Julie, not niece, but my friend Julie said to me also last time I saw her. So 2 people have said this to me, and I don't need to say what it is because it's personal, but it's just who I want to be, and they're saying that's what they appreciate about me. So I'm going to end on that happy note. I do feel happy. I'm determined to be happy, and I'll probably see you in 2 weeks. And I thank all of you, and life is good. Bye now.